Today, we return to speculative Tolkienism after a short hiatus, diving into Return of the King's first chapter, Minas Tirith, to consider the character of Denethor. His persona differs markedly between Tolkien's book and Jackson's movie. Was Denethor truly evil, or just sad and beset with shadows? Let us dive right in and start speculating.
I want to really just jump to where this meeting with Denethor, which is kind of the meat of the whole chapter. And of course, the meeting with Denethor is very different. It's very different than the one we see in the film. Like, Denethor is much more angry.
Yeah.
I think in the chapter as Tolkien wrote it, he's more, he's a little bit dark, but
stern.
He's mainly just sad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But here he's like almost depicted as evil. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like insane. Like I think there's some things like in like that Peter Jackson did amazingly, right?
You're right.
There's some things like particularly I think in this chapter and a few other chapters, like in Minas Tirith, that I've got to question it doesn't make sense why they would make him this kind of unhinged. You know what I'm talking about? In the movie.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is that since it is a film and you're kind of dealing with dullards who haven't read the books, you have to paint with you have to paint with broad brush strokes and make things a little bit more comic booky. So he has to be therefore a little bit more of a villain, you know?
Yeah.
That's my...
Yeah, I mean, do you think that because they didn't use a Palantir in the film, that they had to make him... They needed a device to show him, like, kind of go crazy? I don't know.
Yeah. That makes... Yeah, I don't know. Like, I actually forgot that he doesn't have a Palantir in the film.
Yeah.
Is that true? Even in the extended version and everything, like there's no...
I don't remember having any Palantir in the extended version, which I thought was...
Maybe Peter Jackson thought that's just too many Palantirs and people would be confused. Because Aragorn now has a Palantir, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah. But
it, like, how else would... Because, like, even here he's talking about how, like, oh, Gandalf, you try to counsel me, but I actually know a lot more of what's going on. I suspect that Aragorn, you're trying to supplant me with a new king. And, you know, he's much more wily, much more in tune with, like, the usurpations that he suspects are happening. And the only reason he could know those things is if he had a Palantir, but you're saying he doesn't.
I don't think he does. But let me ask you this again. Maybe this might be jumping the gun a little bit. But let's speculate. If Denethor never went crazy, never killed himself, never did, didn't snap, how do you think he would have reacted to Aragorn? You know, like the king. You know, I mean, maybe we can discuss that later. But
that's a good question. Actually, it's funny, because in the book, I just noticed that Tolkien describes... I never noticed this before, but basically, there's the tall, right next to you. There's the tall white throne, and Denethor sitting like to the side of it.
Yeah, and
when I was reading about that, and I guess that's depicted accurately, basically, but I was reading about that and I was like, you know, how long has Gondor been kingless at this point? You know, like, nature abhors a vacuum and power abhors a vacuum, and you'd think, like, well, what's stopping Denethor from just climbing those few steps there and sitting on the throne and saying, look, we haven't had a king for many, many generations. Can't I just be your king? I'm like literally sitting here at the foot of the throne. Can I just not sit on the throne? I'll be your king, and you'll have a king.
Okay.
Of course, there's, like, you know, all kinds of, like, Tolkienistic explanations for why that wouldn't be the case, because he's not, he's not of the right lineage, but he's close.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I think in later chapters maybe it was like earlier, but someone had said that in like why isn't Denethor king? And there's like in like if it was like a lesser line or a lesser civilization, he would have been a king a long time ago. But even
Right.
because it's Gondor, that whatever. Okay,
It's
so
like
here it is. Gondor was without a king for 976 years before Aragorn reestablished the kingship. The last king of Gondor was Eärnur, who was challenged to a battle by the Witch King of Angmar and never returned. That's right. I knew that, but
Right.
I
Okay,
didn't know
yeah.
the name.
But that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
How many years was it again?
976.
Yeah, so 900 something years. The very fact that Denethor hasn't, I mean, not that he's been steward for that long, but in his whole lifetime he's been steward, and as have his ancestors. And it's like
Yeah.
the very fact that he hasn't surmounted the throne and declared himself king speaks, I guess, to his character. So he's not just he's a little bit less scheming and wily than Jackson depicts him here. And I think we need to give Denethor more credit for just maintaining stewardship and yeah.
But the thing that I feel like in Tolkien's books, like in the book, is that like there's like that gray area, where like so Denethor is basically a just ruler. He's a good man, right?
Right.
Denethor in the book wanted what was best for Gondor, for the land, where this Denethor in the film wants what's best for Denethor. I don't think he was. I guess that's the reason I asked the question. Like, how do you think the book Denethor would treat Aragorn? I think if he was convinced, just like Boromir, he would have been like, all right, cool. Like the king's back, and now I can retire or whatever.
Right, but the Jackson Denethor, I don't think he would be that way.
No.
Yeah.
Because like even when with the depiction of like with Pippin, he's talking to Pippin, not like what do you call Theoden talked with Merry, like which again Gandalf is like a kindly old man, but there was still like a little bit of kindness and amusement that Denethor had with Pippin. So he wasn't completely devoid of any kind of emotion. He wasn't overtaken with anger. He might have been like grief stricken because his son had died, but he wasn't, just this hateful kind of, figure that's depicted here. Now, I liked the movie. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, like, going back and reading and seeing like reading this chapter again with the way that we've been reading it, it's like, wow, Denethor was actually an interesting character,
more reasonable. In fact, I mean, like again, like I love the movie, and him eating and kind of slurping through all these like foodstuffs, like this is just very memorable. Where he's kind of eating in front of everyone, and no one else is eating. It's almost shockingly like it's shocking impropriety. Like, oh, you need to share that. It just makes him seem like, again, a jerk. But that's again not in the book. In the book, they talk not at dinner, and then he invites them all to dinner. He invites Gandalf and Frodo, or Gandalf and Pippin, to eat.
Yeah.
And later Pippin's like, yeah, we, he asked me all these questions. I had some cakes with the king, with the steward, and so he's very nice to Pippin and very, very hospitable in a way. So this is like an inaccurate depiction of Denethor, but as cinema, it works because this is a very memorable scene where he's like chewing, and all the juices of the tomato is squirting through his lips,
It's kind of, has this become almost like a meme, like the whole tomato eating?
It seems like it's very memorable. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what film is about. It's like making these visual impressions that stick with your subconscious or your conscious mind, and like it's very good, very good as cinema, but it's just a little bit off the book, really.
Well, I think though, I mean, thinking about it now, they probably had to depict Denethor like this because of just
Yeah.
because he didn't have the Palantir. There was no other explanation other than he wanted to kind of take the power for himself. I don't know if that's kind of like the underlying feeling that I got.
Right.
So
And I think in a big film with lots and lots of characters, you need to kind of have like a little bit more of a shorthand, kind of like how they put white hats on the good guys and black hats on the bad guys in old westerns and stuff. You need
right.
a bit of a shorthand so we know which whether or not to be suspicious of someone. And of course, sometimes you kind of thwart your expectations, and that's also good cinema. But like, I bet I just feel like they needed to crystallize him a little bit more.
Well, do you think that with all the movies, we're thinking about, do you think with all the movies, as for the book, like they needed a secondary villain? I mean, cinematically, like
Right.
in the
In
you
the
had
book, it was Boromir.
Boromir, and he was redeemed himself, right?
Yeah.
Then in the Two Towers, it was Saruman.
Yeah. Secondary villain. Yeah.
Where it was
Yeah.
kind of like the main. And I mean, I wouldn't say Boromir was a villain. I mean, don't get me wrong, but
No.
he kind of.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
of
is
course,
weird.
there are lots of secondary and tertiary villains in Lord of the Rings. I mean, there's Gollum himself is a bit of a villain, a bit of a scoundrel,
Yes.
and so you got Gollum, you got people that are less trustworthy, I suppose. Bill Ferny.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, I mean, they needed. I think they needed the villain to kind of like to give us like some depth. I don't know if that's the right word, but
Or just it charges this scene with a lot more energy. I mean, can you
yeah,
imagine this scene where it's like, oh, we had our chat, now hey, you want to go have some dinner? Like it wouldn't have been as like dicey, you know.
yeah.
So it works as film, but I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just
Yeah.
saying the book, as most books are, they're more nuanced, and Tolkien's book is, and I think I appreciate that.
Yeah, I know.
Pippin shows Denethor his sword, and again,
Yeah.
there's much more of a sense of hospitality, of interest. Although there's because the halfling comes from this the riddle that or the dream that Boromir
Yeah.
heard, and so like there was a prophecy of sorts, and so he's a little bit hesitant to embrace this halfling because the very idea of halflings were kind of associated with the death of his son. But still, he's like as hospitable and as welcoming and as warm as I feel like he could be. More so, maybe. He's looking at his sword, and they're talking about that, and then Pippin just suddenly swears fealty to Denethor, and he accepts it. And he's like, I won't forget it. I won't fail to reward you. So it's a little bit more like, I don't know, like a.
You know what though? It seems like in the movie, because he did the same thing in the movie, correct?
Yeah.
Like, but it seems like in the here he a little bit impulsive, but I think it was not from a place of fear. Where I think the other, like in the movie, there was a everything was kind of like fear based, like.
Yeah, in the movie, the idea I got is that like Pippin was so overwhelmed with guilt that Boromir died protecting him,
Yeah.
that he pledged himself to Denethor, but that pledge it felt like he was basically giving himself a prison sentence. Like it just
Yeah.
felt darker than
Yeah,
this, which feels a little bit more like dutiful and noble, and not
Yeah,
as
yeah.
dark, you know, like
Well, the other thing, real quick about Pippin, particularly in the later chapters here, is like there's definite growth as far as like a maturity that happens with Pippin. You know, where he's not the comic relief. He is, but he isn't. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah,
like
he grows up. Yeah,
yeah, but I don't think that he like Pippin. I don't think he was ever really the comic relief. If anything, in the Lord of the Rings, in the books, Sam was more or less the comic relief. You know what I'm talking about?
Sam and Pippin. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
Speaking of comic relief, can we speculate briefly, imagining what So Pippin just swears his loyalty to Denethor, and Denethor is like, I accept. I can put you to work. I can give you assignments. Can we
I'll give
speculate
you a
on
gig, bro.
what?
I'll give you a gig, bruv.
Yeah, can we speculate on some of the assignments? If there were not some war brewing outside of the gate, like what kinds of things would Denethor make Pippin do?
Dude, he'd probably be a stable boy or something like that. Or I actually no, because they really didn't have a whole lot of horses there, did they?
No back. How about scratching his back?
Yeah.
It's like, can you start with you're low enough. Can you reach down my lower back? Lower.
I can't. It's right in the middle. Right
there.
Right. There's always that one part where you can't really get.
Yeah. Oh no. I know. I always have to keep like a scissors handy, and I just like.
Dude, I've.
Oh, you got like the real deal there. Nice.
I got a back.
It's handy and everything,
dude. Like ever since like, you know what though? It's like since I started like putting on like lifting like serious, like I don't stretch enough. So like I'm not saying like I've got all these fucking muscles because that's not it. But like it's hard to,
Yeah.
Not as flexible as I was.
Exactly. Anyway, so you can't think of any other funny tasks for Pippin?
I don't know, man, because like what would a hobbit do? I mean, really.
Well, you'd have to feed him a lot because like that's the other thing about this chapter is like Pippin's really food is on his mind quite a bit. Like that whole scene in the Jackson movie where he's like 11sies?
Second breakfast.
Second breakfast. That's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Like again, like Billy Boyd, because it was because in my mind, like I picture a completely different Pippin when I'm reading, is particularly in these chapters and when the stuff that like wasn't depicted in the film, and I keep like it was like almost shocking when you just pulled up that clip to see it was Billy Boyd or whatever.
Yeah.
To see him like on there, it's like, oh, that's not the Pippin that I know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, he just. I
mean, I don't dislike him as a Pippin, but he's not. Yeah, it's not really what I visualize when I think of Pippin.
Well, because he looks. I mean, because he's like the oldest out of all of them, I think, except for maybe Sean Astin, whatever.
Yeah.
And Pippin's like the youngest in here,
right?
So he did a good Pippin. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but
did. Seems like
it was. Yeah. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's Denethor, bring wine and food and seats for the guests. Like he would have never said that in the movie, right?
Yeah, I do like the confrontation between him and Gandalf. I mean, you can feel them kind of butting heads, and kind of trying to one up each other,
Right. I mean, the very fact that Pippin sees Denethor as almost like a peer or a rival, but a peer like on the same level as Gandalf, says a lot about Denethor because he's just a mortal man. And here's Gandalf's a Maiar. Denethor looked indeed much more like a great wizard than Gandalf did, more kingly, beautiful, and powerful, and older. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
It was incredible. But then he goes on to say, but yet Gandalf was, the greater power, the deeper wisdom, blah, blah, blah. But just to be able to kind of like go toe to toe with Gandalf speaks a lot of the power of Denethor.
Well, the fact that they did, it's in a later chapter, I think, but Gandalf did say that Denethor was capable of taking the Palantir and using it, and he could kind of he can kind of go toe to toe, at least mentally, with Sauron. The last paragraph, or the last thing that Gandalf said to Denethor, it's like, did you not know that I'm a steward too? Like that whole.
Oh no, I was gonna do
Yeah.
that. Oh, here at the bottom here. So,
Yeah.
unless the king should come again, and Gandalf's like, unless the king should come again, said Gandalf. Well, my lord Stuart, it is your task to keep some kingdom still against that event, which few now look to see. And then at the very bottom of that paragraph, Gandalf says this, for I also am a steward. Did you not know? And with that, he turned and strode from the hall with Pippin running at his side. So,
See, like the stuff like that I love, about the
Yeah.
about the Gandalf character,
Right.
like again, where I think, particularly in Return of the King, that Jackson did a little bit of disservice to like the stuff that I liked about Gandalf. You know what I'm talking
Mhm.
about? Like
Mhm.
he made Gandalf weaker than he
Right.
should have been.
Right.
Like. And we'll get into it, in the next few chapters. Like,
Right.
like
In fact, I mean, getting back to your point about Gandalf saying that he is the steward, that he is also a steward. The truth being that Gandalf is like the steward of all of Middle Earth to a certain extent. Like that's his task. Denethor is a steward who's kind of watching over and taking care of what.
well, no, because Denethor is like Gandalf is saying, yeah, you got to worry about Gondor. I
Right.
got to worry about all of Middle Earth, there, buddy. So
Right. Right. Yeah, he should have
you
said
and
that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
last time I checked, there, Denethor, Gondor is within Middle Earth and not the other way
right,
around.
yeah, yeah. Middle Earth doesn't, Gondor doesn't encompass Middle Earth. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying,
Just saying, I'm bigger, better.
little. I think I care a little bit more about the planet than you do, Denethor.
Yeah. So why do you think Gandalf erupted with this fountain of mirth, this great joy, when he kind of? It seems like he did that because Pippin offered his services to Lord Denethor, maybe to get on Denethor's good side and melt the ice a little bit,
Yeah,
which did a lot of political work, which Gandalf probably wouldn't have been able to do had he just like not had this endearing little hobbit next to him. Maybe.
yeah. Well, maybe he was still able to keep the ring secret. I don't know.
Oh, I know. Maybe it's because Pippin, the least of us, and the least expected to do amazing things. He's just little Pippin. He
Little Pip.
he stepped up at an important moment and did something surprising. And the reason that made Gandalf super happy and this intense joy, which you don't really realize why, it's
Because he didn't wake the Balrog this time.
what?
He didn't wake up the Balrog this time.
Oh right, he didn't. Yes, he did it without waking up the Balrog. No, he's extrapolating and thinking, well, if you can kind of do great things in a pinch, and be very like industrious and surprise everyone and do great things when no one expects you to, extrapolate that to Frodo.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's like, oh wow, maybe Frodo will be able to do this because hobbits always come through and they always
Yeah.
do surprising things.
And they did, and I mean, maybe it's just because it was like setting up like a timeline for the book, or for the for the new chapter, or for the Return of the King, is that they did mention Frodo, like as Pippin was doing this, Frodo was an Ithilien, or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? So yeah, maybe
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
right. Maybe there is like kind of like that.
yeah.
That
The other there's another strange line here where it says Pippin. So Denethor is not as other men of this time, Pippin, and whatever be his descent from father to son, by some chance the blood of Westernesse runs nearly true in him, as it does in his other son Faramir, and yet did not in Boromir, whom he loved best. And I'm like, that's a little bit of a weird thing to say, like, because the blood of Westernesse runs true in Denethor and Faramir,
Yeah.
not Boromir. And I'm like, Boromir and Faramir have the same parents, right? I mean, they're both, it's Denethor and Findulius or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
So why would it be any different in Faramir as opposed to Boromir?
Maybe they just, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he got more of his father in him, and
Yeah.
maybe he loved Boromir more. Denethor loved Boromir more because he was his mom. Like, he reminded him of his wife,
of the wife that passed. Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I do know, it's like, in like in a lot of my experience in life, like when two people are alike, and particularly I've seen this in families where, like, these guys are like this dad and this kid are the same, like the same person. They have like a lot of the same characteristics, and they always clash. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, right. Interesting. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if because they were so different, he's like, this is my wife, and then
Yeah.
like maybe like he looked at Faramir and was like looked at everything that he didn't like about himself or whatever, and
wow, you should have been a psychologist.
Gosh, I miss my calling, man.
Missed your calling. No, it's good. No, but I really appreciate that. But I do think it's interesting because when you see like your own children or for me personally, like certain aspects of my children, they take after me, and certain aspects take after my wife. And sometimes you see people that their child looks like the spitting image of the father and not so much the mother, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting how sometimes genetics do weird things like that.
Yeah, so I wondered if that was in Tolkien's mind when he wrote this.
Yeah, or just
But the other thing though too, like did Denethor not have the lifespan that, since like the blood ran true in him, you'd figure they would have a longer lifespan, right?
Well, it probably would have if he didn't like jump off the pinnacle of.
Oh yeah.
But
that's a good point. Good point.
Good point.